So yes, it's nearly a 2-hour video. It's took me all week to film this. There is so much information in it. I've really struggled to get it down under 2 hours. So enjoy it best you can, and I hope you really take away something special from this video that will help you be a better driver. The Aston Martin Vantage GT3, with an in-game performance of 520 horsepower and just over 400 Newton meters of torque, it's far from the original specifications of the car. The original car boasts a tyre-bending 600 horsepower and closer to 700 Newton meters of torque. The performance is delivered by the 6-litre V12, which is nicely cooled by the huge array of bonnet vents and the massive front grille. The outer shell has been slightly modified to allow better airflow around the wheel arches to increase braking performance. And what can I say about this massive rear wing, bigger than the average ironing board? Looking towards the inside of the car, there's fat chance of finding any creature comforts. It's about as sparse as a vintage Mini. Hang on to your eardrums as you enjoy the true sound of the V12. So without further delay, let's leave the elegance of Monza and make our way to Catalunya to start our 5-day test. Hi guys, welcome to the channel. We're going to be taking a look at Circuit de Catalunya, and it's going to be quite an in-depth guide. I wasn't really sure how I was going to be filming this, and I think the best way to film it is day to day. So over the next 5 days I'm going to be heading to Catalunya in Spain. I'm going to be taking the Aston Martin GT3 car, the Vantage, and we're going to be looking at each day where to go with the car, really, with regard to setup, learning the circuit, and then after each day I'm going to be looking at what's wrong with the car and spending a little bit of time working out where the car could be better, where I could better myself around the circuit. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about setting up the car. It's quite a big video, I think. This is going to be involving creating an online event. I'll be using time trial. One thing I did want to try and use really was just the process around going to a circuit and spending some time at that circuit as if you travelled to the circuit itself and you were going to spend a week testing, really getting the car dialed in to that circuit. So without further ado, I'll just put on my headset. I'm going to be running Crew Chief. I'm also running RS Dash. I will try and take a few pictures that are going to be relevant to this whole learning process, and I'll try and talk through as much as possible really, so that we can all benefit from a learning experience, I guess. So one thing I did want to go through initially is the setups that I'm using, just because some people have watched some of my old videos and are asking if I'm still using a certain setup configuration or questions with my wheel. So I'll just run through what I'm using and what I've got it set on. I am using the automatic at the minute. A lot of you will know that I've got a few wrist problems with a fall that I sustained a few months back. So I'm still just driving with one hand. Hopefully I'll be getting the McLaren GT3 wheel, should be today. So the rest of the video might be using a different wheel. But hopefully that'll allow me to upshift and downshift with the one hand, and maybe I can go back to using a manual gearbox. But for now, my configuration settings, please just pause the video if you need help with any of these. The one down the bottom says yes if my wheel's blocking it. I will quickly go through these. I am using a keyboard as well, which is really helpful for setting up a few things. You can pause the video again at any point. I don't really go around, I prefer to go back to adjust these rather than adjusting them on the fly. Stability controls generally off for most GT3 cars. What's the next one? I do use these to move the seat back and forward to adjust my field of view in certain cars that I've not driven before. And there you go. We're moving to the force feedback. 9 times out of 10, anyone that's using Fanatec gear should be running raw. The gain, I might have adjusted this but regarding my wrist, it's very hard work on one arm, to be honest, if you've got the force feedback set too high. And then they're all as they are, as you can see them. I'll just come onto the wheel. Sensation, I've got set to 300. I think that was to do with trying to get the wheel lock, because I don't really want to be letting go of the wheel. It was something I came up with that works really well for my current situation. So I'm only running 18 force feedback, which is incredible. I'm surely I used to run that around 60. Shock is off. ABS is set to 50, which is all down to the pedal. Vibration is where I want to feel that ABS come in. Drift mode I've got set to -4. Brake force I've got set to off. I am running the performance brake kit on my Fanatec V3 inverted pedals. If you look back at one of my previous videos, it goes through installing this and why you set it up. Effects from the wheel I've got set to 60. So that's that. So one of the things that I'm going to look at during this process is, obviously I generally set my cars up to race online. I don't ever really do custom races offline. I don't really do very much of the career mode, but I do a lot of online racing and time trial events, community events. So one of the key factors with this, the first approach that we're going to take is running time trial, and I'll explain why we're going to do that. And one of the other things I would suggest that you do is either make notes on your phone or make notes on a piece of paper, and I'll explain what notes you want to be writing down really. So we're going to be going to Catalunya in Barcelona, Spain, and I haven't really driven much in the Aston Martin, so this is certainly going to be something new regards setup. There we go. Let's pick a nice looking livery. I think this one would work good with the introduction video. Hope you all enjoyed that. A bit tongue-in-cheek really. So we're using rear wheel drive, traction control and ABS, which I'll be turning off. 525 horsepower, so it's going to be pretty good. Well, I don't think I've posted a time on this circuit, so yeah, it's nothing relevant. So whatever time I post, hopefully we might be able to get a look. Yeah, there's other people posting 144s in the GT3 series, 146s. I'd certainly like to see 143, to be honest. But this is where I'll be posting my times, and I'll be using my own Ghost throughout all of this process. I'd never really try and focus racing against somebody else's Ghost. It's always best to try and pit yourself against yourself, and that way if you're making any adjustments to the car, you can see where the adjustments have been made. If you're changing your line through a corner and you notice that works really well, you'll be also able to notice that difference. But for now we're not going to run any Ghosts. We're just going to head to the circuit, have a little look at the setup. There's a few things I would like to change before we set off, but we're just going to run a base setup, have a look at the stable setup, and we'll have a look at the loose setup as to what feels best to base our build from. So we've got, let's just load this setup. We'll load up loose first. I'm just going to go into here. Obviously we're always trying to set the car up to run at around 32 psi. So I'll just bring these up around the 23 mark. Usually gets into that sort of area. You can see already that there is no front downforce, so I'd imagine we're going to suffer quite a bit with understeer through the corners. We've got quite a large brake bias towards the front of the car. We all know that you can close these ducts a little bit, so I'm just going to make a smaller adjustment there. Moving to suspension, I'm just going to leave suspension as it is for the moment. The only thing I am going to touch is the steering ratio, because I'm using one hand. I want to go from lock to lock, and you see where my wheel's locking out? That's full lock. So when I'm driving, because I'm using one hand, I don't want to be messing around with the wheel too much. So that's one of the things I'm going to adjust. I'm going to leave all that as it is. If anyone's thinking about using dampers and setting up dampers, one good thing to remember is if you have slow bump and slow rebound, the rebound is always going to be higher, the figure-wise, than the bump. And that goes for fast bump and fast rebound. The rebound is always going to be a higher figure. If you've noticed, that's how things are. So if you've ever messed with them and you're not happy with it, just make sure that that's done. Obviously the fuels, I think fuel depletion's off, so I'm just going to put that down. And I'm going to run the radiator at 60% for all this. I'm going to adjust the ABS down to 30, which is a personal preference, but I'm going to be turning it off. I don't know why I do this, but I just do. And obviously we're going to be running the clutch LSD, limited slip diff. I'm going to leave these as they are for now, but I certainly think we'll be visiting this section, as I think this makes such a difference to how the car feels, how the car drives, understeers, oversteers. If you're going to adjust anything on a car to get it to how you want to drive it, I would always look towards the clutch LSD. So with that done, I'm going to save that, and all I'm going to do now is turn a few laps. But one thing I'm going to make a note of, because it's going to be really important for when we come to set up our lobby, and that is the weather conditions. So we're looking at the ambient temperature is 83 degrees Fahrenheit. The track temperature is 111 Fahrenheit. And it's medium cloud. And this is all relevant for when you're setting up your own lobby, because these are the conditions that you're tuning the car in. So if you've got different weather, if you're running it clear, it's going to make a difference to the tyre pressures, and track temperature is going to make a huge difference to whether you need to adjust your tyre pressures or not. So first of all, we're just going to run installation laps, really, see what's wrong with the car and just learn the circuit a little bit. So I'll get on with that, and then we'll have a little look at my sector times using the RS dash. So if we just have a little look at the lap, I've got to be honest, this car feels horrendous. Under braking, there's huge amounts of oversteer. It's really twitchy under braking, something that we'll have a look at altering using the dampers. Sorry, the rear differential, the deceleration diff. The front understeer is huge. I think there's too much locking at the front under heavy braking. Lots of running wide. There's too much oversteer on acceleration on exit in the corner. The cambers, huge changes through the wheel, from the inside edge of the wheel to the outer edge. You can see the tyre temperature or pressure wasn't getting, it was about 2 psi away from 32, the benchmark that was looking at. Definitely lots to do with this. You can see the cars, it's just totally inconsistent, really. Very hard to string lap after lap together with this car. The best time that I posted there was a 1:51.6, which is a huge, long way off where we want to be. We did a 2:07, a 1:55, 1:52, 2:02, and a 1:51. So we're going to just have a go back, and we're going to restart the session. So 1:48.8 is where we're at. So as you can see, the stable setup is far more consistent. 150, 148, 150, 150, and then finally another 148. You see the car's suffering from far less oversteer on corner entry. Still suffering with lots of understeer, but certainly feels much more planted. So we've got a long way to go, 148. So definitely going to be working from the basis of a stable setup is where we want to go. You can look at the sector times, you could even make a note of them if you want. But what I'll do from here is exit and record that lap time as being my fastest lap time so far. If we go to friends list, and we can select our ghost from this list here, add ghost, and then we can launch the session again. So we're just going to start having a look at this setup now and where we can better it. So definitely under braking, we want to brake this car as fast as possible. So I'm just going to bring this down and see if we can get the car stopped a little bit quicker. And reduce that to get a little bit more temperature into the front brakes. And the rears seem to be running quite cool around the 600 mark. So we'll just give that a try for now. See what temperature we get in the brakes, and see if it helps us through the braking zones. And you can see instantly under heavy braking, didn't really like that at all. Locking out the rear. So we're going to bring that balance a little bit further forward. We're also looking to spot our braking zone into turn 1. I'm looking out on the right hand side here for this, just after this board here. So we didn't get too much oversteer. There was a tiny amount, but I think around the 60 mark would be better. And maybe bang on the board. So we broke a little bit too early there, I think, because we'd done too much braking. I was having to let off the brake too much before the apex. So we started that again, felt good on the brakes, but I think I braked too early. And we're still getting a little bit of locking at the rear. Maybe the 60 wasn't enough. Or maybe it's the fact that the differential's too much. So yeah, we'll just decrease this as far as we can go. So we can only take it down another notch. So I wasn't totally convinced there. well, that's where we're going to have to leave it for today, guys. It's been a good couple of hours. I'm just going to do 2 hours a day, getting the car set up. Certainly a different beast than when we first started out, but it's still suffering from understeer, a little bit on the oversteer, but just looking at it now, it really struggles through that turn there. It's very much out of shape. I think I could turn in a little bit earlier here, carry more speed. Just getting the power down there. So yeah, thanks very much for joining, guys. Until next time. Morning then, guys. Day 2 of testing at Catalunya. And we learned quite a lot yesterday. We also have a new wheel. Oh yeah. One of the nice things about the new wheel, obviously I've not had very much chance to play with it just yet, but from taking off my old rim and putting on my new one, it's literally carried across every single setting from one wheel to the next. I haven't done a firmware update on the wheel because it's just attached to the base. I ran a little test with it yesterday and everything seems perfectly fine with it. Just getting used to the different button mappings and where everything's now situated. But really nice feel to the wheel initially. Hopefully over time I'll get used to using the wheel. One thing I would just like to say is a bit of a gripe, to be honest. I did buy the quick release attachment which comes with the base, which makes the fitting of the wheel far easier. Disappointing to see that on a wheel of such calibre really that you're having to pay, I think it was about another $95. I guess that's around about 80 odd pounds. I'd have thought it'd have come of standard really with a wheel like that. But all in all, buying it from Fanatec, getting it to the UK with the attachment, quick release attachment, I think it was about £260. So whether the double clutch system gives me that sort of benefit, whether once I've got both hands, whether I really feel the difference, especially in the smaller GT cars where you're not particularly drifting with the wheel and you're just going from lock to lock. I'm really looking forward to using it. But let's get on with today's testing session. I am trying to limit them down, so I guess I am trying to cut out as little as possible, but I'm trying to leave in as much as I can really to give you an idea of my approach and how I go about setting the car up and just the whole learning process around it. But if we look back at yesterday's test session, and I think I'll probably add a video from yesterday's test session to this one, we could see that the car, and also having a little bit of time yesterday to think about how the car was set up, what was wrong with the car, just going away and thinking about that and how I could best approach today's test session to try and get the best out of the car. Well, if we just move to set up a session and we come into time trial, sorry, buttons in different places. If we come to set up the time trial and just have a look at the circuit, well, coming down into turn 1 is where the car still doesn't feel particularly stable under braking. Turn 2 seems okay, just running a little bit of curb. All the way around turn 3 I'm quite happy with. A little bit unbalanced coming through turn 4 and losing, I think, so much time in turn 5. And the car just doesn't seem to want to turn. Loads of understeer. So I think there's an issue here, a big issue. Coming down into here, I'd like the car to feel more planted through this section, and I'd like to carry more speed coming through this fast kink. And then obviously down into the braking area into sector 3, loads going on in this corner here. Really need to slow the car down quickly and get it turned in, which I'm seem to be struggling with. And again around this corner, I forget the names of all of them, but we're struggling to get the power down around here. Just really waiting to get the power in. And then just this twisty section, just need to get the car hooked up a little bit more responsive, less sliding through this section, and get the car feeling a bit more planted. And then out along here. To be honest, I think sector 1 is probably my strongest sector with how the car's set up, and sector 2 and 3 fall by the wayside. So I'm going to be setting up a session today where I think we might be able to just get an idea of where the car is struggling. So if we click to our friends list, I just remember, I'm going to call him Doshi chap. He's running in the 911 GT3 car, a car which I've spent quite a lot in, to be honest. And if he's able to set a 144.9, even if we did say 145, we still need to better our lap time by about 1.5 seconds. So I'm going to add Dozy Chap's lap time. I'm going to add this ghost, and it's going to give us a lot of information on where we are struggling with setting the car up, where the car's quick and where it's slow. And we don't even need to run a single lap to know some of this detail. So if we just start this session, another good thing to note is the time of year and also the time. Remember these for when we're setting up our own private lobby. So we're just going to turn a lap here and we can see Dozy Chap's ghost is set up. We just come to the tuning menu, just have a look over where we were from yesterday's setup and just a few things that I'm thinking might benefit us. Just see how this works. Just getting used to these different controls. I'm not quite sure how we're swapping. There's no buttons on the back. Oh, there we go. Just those up and down. Okay, so yeah, we're still running slightly less pressures on the front. Still running maximum rear downforce. That might very well change, I think, to try and overcome the understeer. I'm still suffering with mid-corner understeer, so thinking about this and thinking about the response, the toe angle, that might very well change. We could possibly reduce some of the rear toe angle and increase the front toe angle. Maybe even increase the cambers on the front to try and get more response out of the front. Don't think I'm going to mess too much with the dampers for now. it's really fine tuning when you're looking at the damper setup. Engine braking for me is something that I think I seriously need to look at with this car setup, just to try and get the car to turn and grip more through the slower sections. And I think it is the slower sections that are really causing issues with this car setup. Obviously there's no front downforce, but downforce is something that generally only affects the car through higher speed turns, and it's the slow speed corners that we're really losing time on, I think. And the other thing I would like to look at is getting this coast ramp down to try and get more stability under braking. I really want to try and get the car to turn in better through the off throttle sections. I think bringing the preload down to try and induce a little bit more oversteer to turn the car more. So these are a few points that I spent last night thinking about, and yesterday trying to think where we can better the car. But I know we spend a lot of time setting the car up, but there is also the key point of learning the circuit. And although we managed to set a 1:46.4 yesterday, I don't particularly think that was the best lap time that the car was capable of setting, but it was a good enough lap time. So one of the things I'm going to just change at the moment is I'm just going to change this name here. That's just really important when we come to set up. It's still 111 just there. So we're just going to be looking at setting a few laps now, but first off we're going to be looking at Dozy Chap's lap. We're not going to have a look at it, but as we're racing on here and at the end of producing a lap, I'm going to be able to see the sector times that Dozy Chap set in order to get his 1:44.9, and then from there we're going to be able to have a little look at where my lap time is struggling. But first of all, I'd like to just run a few laps, get my eye back in, and see what lap I can actually set. So let's just have a little look at where we are struggling. It wasn't a great lap, not even a good lap at all. I'm not even sure if I could just go across the start finish line and press the pause button and actually see the detail that we've got here. So what we're looking for is the ghost lap, and we're looking at sectors 1, 2 and 3 to obviously get the eventual lap time. But if we look at my personal best that I set yesterday, my first sector time is a 28.3. So he's set of 28.1. So in the first sector alone, I've lost 200ths. The second sector, he sets a 39.7. Well, mine's a 40.3. So there's 600ths of a second lost in one sector alone, which is huge, really. And then sector 3, this is even worse. He sets a 37.1. and mine's a 37.7. So there's nearly 600ths there again. So even in the last two sectors alone, I'm losing 1.2 seconds. So I think that's all down to the understeer, and I must admit there's quite a little bit of oversteer feeling the car today. But I still don't think I've set a good lap yet, so I'm going to see what sort of lap time I can post to get anywhere near close to what I got to yesterday before we start making any adjustments. Hi guys, yeah, I spent the last couple of hours trying to catch Dozy Chap's lap time. Really started to annoy myself setting the car up, changing some of the settings and then going back, trying them again. Nothing seemed to work. Dialing out oversteer, dialing out understeer, and eventually I just reached a point where I'd had enough for the day. Nothing seemed to be working. So I'm going to give up on this one for the minute, come back tomorrow with some fresh ideas, see what we can do tomorrow. Okay, so earlier we spent a long time messing about with so many settings and just trying to find some sort of balance on this car, and it really was starting to drag me down a little bit, to be honest. It just seemed impossible to get anywhere with the setup. So gradually I just started to think more about what the settings were doing and how the car was performing. And as much as there is a lot of understeer, there was also a lot of oversteer that was causing, I think, more of a problem. Initially I thought it was down to the understeer, but the oversteer was also a big issue. So just looking back at these settings as I've got them at the minute, the car feels pretty good. It's not perfect. Getting traction out of corners seems to be one of the main issues. I might have to spend a bit of time on the dampers tomorrow during the setup. Currently running the low radiator at the minute. Might just put that back up to 60. Just running just a comparison really. Just to see where things were with the Ghost. So I'll run a few laps, show you where the car feels. Sorry, I was jumping around a bit there. I'll go from the start. So just so if you want to pause it, see where we're at. Lower the ride height a little bit at the rear to try and combat some oversteer. Soften the rear springs. Soften the anti-roll bars. Brake balance slightly towards the front, more towards the front I think. Brake pressure is a big one I think. Nothing really changed there. Got rid of the engine braking, that was just causing a problem. Locking the wheels on, coming down through the gears. And also gone back to 4 clutches, 100 Newton meter preload, 65. Any lower and the car starts to understeer a little bit on exit, and it's a little bit more twitchy. Obviously you're losing out on getting the power down, but there's just so much wheel spin I think. And then 25 seems to get the car to turn in enough without causing too much understeer, and the preload causes a little bit less oversteer with it near the 100 mark rather than a little bit lower that I had. So I'll turn a few laps and just show you how the car feels. Take it from there. it's definitely oh, finally there is a God. So we're into the 145s finally. But I still feel like do I still feel like there's a long way to go? Certainly do. Scruffy, that really. You look at it like that, it's absolutely scruffy. I hit all my best sector times during that lap. So I've just exited back out of here and gone back to the main menu and downloaded the fastest Ghost that's currently available now. Come back in, made a few slight changes and went back out trying to beat the lap time. I probably spent about another hour doing this and never really managed to beat my lap time, so that'll be it for today, and I'll come back tomorrow and try and make a few different setup changes, try and figure out what's going wrong with the car. Welcome back, joining us here again at Catalunya on day 3 of our test. I'm just going to take a little drive round the circuit and just emphasise a few points that I've been thinking about over the evening, a few areas that I think really need to be looked at in getting the best out of this car. So take a little drive round, I'll just pinpoint a few things that are bothering me. I'll slow it down when we reach where we need to be. So coming down into turn 1, I really think we need to be braking around the 100-metre board, taking this curve still, a little lift off here and then back on the power really. Maybe not reach full throttle, but and again I'm having to brake about here. I'd like to be braking just at the board really, get the car turned in really nicely and just hug this all the way around. I'd just like to hook this up just on the way in, get really tight on the apex. I think that would be better taking, keeping third gear if I can, and again here just taking a tiny bit of curb and then running it out wide. I think it's more in the braking zones. I mean, I'm braking maybe at the 150 board. I'd like to be leaving it, but just as we come through here, the car's terribly unstable. We're getting a lot of rear locking, or yeah, I'd call it probably oversteer. Just the rear end feels that there's an issue there. So I certainly think with the deceleration diff, the coast, I think we probably need to increase that and maybe increase the preload as well. But I still think the car needs to turn in better, more responsive turning. I think it runs the curbs quite well, but all the way around here the car's really having to balance the oversteer. So I could do with doing something to better the grip on oversteer. As much as the car doesn't turn in so well, it's the turning response really. I think it doesn't do too bad at running the curbs. I think tyre temperature wise, not too bad. But if you just look at the travel that's available in the front and the rear, got 1.5 at the rear, the car's sitting fairly high, 1.1 in the bump stops. So unless the car's bottoming out, I might end up lowering that bump stop just to try and give the suspension a little bit more travel. I'll just do a lap and see whether the car's actually hitting the bump stops. I'm going to call this today's Wednesday setup. So we know 146 is pretty good really. So let's get rid of some of this bump stop. And then we can get a little bit more suspension travel, I think. You know, if we make a complete hash of the car throughout today, we can go back to the 146, or even the Tuesday setup that we've saved. So if we just look at that now, I really do forget what we had before. But obviously the bump stop's a lot lower. Let's see if we're running out of travel in the suspension. I'm just wondering if we just add a touch of toe at the rear, just to see if we can get rid of that, make the car a little bit more stable on acceleration. Just give that a whirl again. Hasn't made any difference really, has it? Let's just add a touch more. So after adding some more toe angle to the rear, the car feels much better under acceleration, but as I continue to do further laps, the car just feels unbalanced and I end up scrapping today's, which forces me then to scrap the whole session after I've been hitting the wall. But if you're not pushing to the maximum, you're not finding the limits of the car, and as much as people like Max Verstappen have been criticised, if you're not crashing, you're not finding the limits. So I'll come back later in the session, later in the day, and do another little stint. But till then, I'll see you later. Okay, welcome back to the channel, guys. And I've got to be honest, this is proving an absolute mammoth task. I'm certainly learning a lot about the last two sections, or the last section of Catalunya. And in all fairness, the last section is absolutely killing me. I'm trying to get the power down, trying to get the car planted. I've got sections 1, or sector 1 and 2. Quite happy with the car setup. I'm doing a 28, a dead more or less, sector 1. A 39.6, which is my best sector 2 time, that went really well. But the last sector, I'm losing about a second in the last sector, it really is. But the car itself is proving an absolute mountain to climb to get a good setup for it. I don't know whether because it's missing the front splitter that the front downforce is so bad. But along with that, the traction's bad as well. It feels bad. It feels, unless you're really tentative with your inputs and you really are balancing the car, the amount of on the brake oversteer as you're coming into corners just seems to lock the back wheels up. Now, I've got the differential set as low as I can possibly set it to, really try not to lock the rear end. The same problem under braking, the engine braking just tends to spin the car out so much. So braking's pretty hard. I'll run you this replay of the last lap I've done. I have done a 1 foot. I'm looking at my delta time on my dashboard here. My personal best would be a 1:44.8 if I'd got my sector times together. But I have ran a quicker lap time just running a tiny bit wide, which was disallowed. But it is really proving a tough one to crack. Whether it's me needing to learn the circuit, but I'm not sure whether I've finally found the right balance. I've left a lot of today's testing out. I've done done about 2 hours this morning, and then I've done about another 2 hours this afternoon trying to find a setup. And I've literally scrapped 2 setups during this. So it's a good job, always save the start of the day base setup and then work from there, because I've scrapped it twice now and gone back to where I'd finished yesterday afternoon. So I'll just show you the lap. No real learnings today, I'm just following my own ghost, because that was the time I set yesterday, a 1:45.6. So we've knocked 600ths off that, which is, yeah, in itself, it's a good achievement, but I don't know whether that's down to bettering the car's handling or whether it's just down to learning the circuit more. I'd like to think it's through the setup, because I've spent so bloody long trying to get a good balance. But for the final sector, the only thing I can think is causing me problems is the damper setups, because you run so much curb in the last sector. I really need to spend a bit of time on my dampers, I really think. But that's an episode in itself. So I'm going to try and keep this really sweet and short and sweet. Show you this little video. I'll try and run a few laps to show you how the car's looking. It is pretty balanced, but it's absolutely nailing that front left tyre. Don't know how long you would sustain this in an actual race without doing a bit of tyre management, because the front left tyre gets absolutely hammered if you're not driving carefully. So I'll show you the lap and enjoy. I'll not do the in-car view because it doesn't really work too well, I don't think, on the replays. I'll just try and run a lap and show you how the car's handling. It sounds not great through the TV system or monitor. So the car hooks up nicely through the first 2 sectors. Does feel really nicely balanced through there, can get the power down. And through here, just really need to be gentle and feather the throttle in. Just leaving it to the point where you can get the full throttle down. And then here's really tentative, try and hug this curb. I think I'm not even sure if I dropped down into first gear there and found it, just to tighten it up a little bit. Just ran a little bit of inside curve there, don't know whether that helped me pull around or not. Usually it takes you out. I think I ran a little bit too much curve there as well, to be honest. But here, this is where you really need to be listening to the engine and really slowly feed in that acceleration. I'm just, obviously I'm still using just the one hand, but it's nice to be able to just drop down a gear for these 2 corners. The engine just doesn't drop down quick enough for me. But this section here, you absolutely need to nail that. Definitely not nailed through that section on this lap. I was hoping to get a 144, but just didn't quite get it in the 145 dead. So I'll run a lap and just show you how the car's handling. I'll just run through my tuning setup just to show you where we're at. I've dropped the rear tyre pressure right the way down, just trying to get as much rear grip as possible. I think the brake balance is from where it was yesterday, but I still can't manage to get the brake pressure any higher without locking out, especially under the first corner and down the back straight. Increase the caster angle slightly just to give a bit more weight through the steering wheel. And I'm running more camber on the rear than I am on the front, just because of that front left tyre. It just gets absolutely nailed. And also to try and get the car more grip again at the rear. Ride height, I've increased that because it seems to be bottoming out in a couple of places. There wasn't very much left on the springs. Again, running a really soft rear setup trying to get the front end a bit sharper and get the grip at the rear, again on the anti-roll bars. But I'm also running toe out and toe in, toe in on both ends of the car really, just to try and get the stability through acceleration. If you just bury the throttle even on the straight without holding the wheel, the Aston just pulls off to one side without any rear toe on. So I just adjusted that, and again just to get some more response from the front. Moving to the dampers, tried to soften up the front or stiffen up the front end. The slow bump, just coming down to that first corner, the car just seemed to dip a little bit and just push forward a little bit. So in stiffening the front, I've just softened the rear as well and changed this bump stop from 30mm down to 15, just to try and get a little bit more travel through the suspension. Tried to stiffen up the front end really, soften out the rear. Not messed too much with the fast bump, I don't think. But again, I think that's going to need looking at as we look at the curbs possibly tomorrow through the final sector. Engine braking, still managed to keep that at 6. I'd have liked to have had more, and traction control ABS are irrelevant currently because they're off. Although I'm not actually sure, I might actually be running ABS at the minute. I'd be intrigued to see how well it performs with ABS off, if I am running it. I've messed around with this so much today to try and get this in a better place, but 100 preload. I did try running number 2 clutch, because if I could get this coast ramp down to 10, I really would, because I'd like to take it lower. It just seems to, if you get it any higher, it's still locking out the rear. I would like to have taken that lower, to be honest. I tried doing it with the clutches, but it didn't seem to have the desired effect. So this has been a real struggle to set this car up, even to the extent that we've got it now. But it does handle really nicely, I think now. I'm starting to find a balance with the car, and I think it's about driving the track really now and just learning the circuit. I think I've really started to get to grips with learning to balance this car and really listening out for the changes in the engine sound and the sensation through the wheel. But just on the back straight and the first corner, I think you're judging that by the sound really, as to whether the engine's caught up with the wheels. So I'll just run a lap and show you where we're at. So let's turn a lap. Well, as you can see, it's still quite a battle. My sector 2 time wasn't as good as my best, nearly 200ths off my best time. My sector 3 time was a little bit better, but I would like to see that in the 36s rather than 37s. And first sector is still pretty good, quite happy with first sector, happy with the second sector really, but that final sector is where we should be dropping into the 144s without a doubt. But I think that's all to do with the fast bump. But I'll certainly be having a look at that tomorrow. Thanks for joining anyway, guys, and hope you're enjoying this little in-depth look. And catch you again tomorrow. Okay, so welcome back to the channel. Thursday afternoon. Spent the morning doing a little bit of testing. Still not found anything better to set the car up with. So we're still currently running with yesterday's tune. I've posted a couple of 144.6s, but just a tiny running wide that's cancelled the lap. But it's not consistent. They definitely aren't consistent 144s. They're very rare. It's whether you get that, this last section you could see there in the background, whether you actually nail that as to whether you actually get the lap in. I've got some different gloves on today. These are literally winter gloves, but I was told by Fanatec that I think it's this section here that's been catching on the glove. So whether the seam's poorly placed and it's just been digging into the wheel a little bit. They are really soft, you know. I don't even know if it's like a suede or softer than suede, but anyway, that's that for now. I've been told maybe it's the gloves. They've done numerous tests. I have emailed Fanatec, see what they come back with. But anyway, for now, I think the setup is good, it's balanced. I don't know what else I can do with it really, other than just finding a better line. I still don't think the turning is very sharp. I'm still losing. One thing I would like to try during this session is reducing the rear downforce by 1 notch, just to see if, I know we're already struggling with oversteer. I'm just wondering if I could dial in a little bit more front grip by reducing the oversteer, but still it's very unlikely that it's going to help us where we want the help really, because I'd really like the help in these slow corners, so the downforce is neither here nor there really. Yeah, we'll see how we go in this session. I'll film it and cut it down to whatever. I'd just be happy to see consistent 144s, I think. I think 143 is definitely outside the boundary. If I posted a 144.3 somewhere, I might think a 144.3. I might think a 143 is actually doable, but I've probably spent 2 hours, and in 2 hours I've done 2 144.6s, all of which just running wide, so literally using as much of the track as possible. Let's see how we get on. I've saved as Thursday's setup. Wednesday was as we finished yesterday afternoon. So I'll just run through the setup. I might have just taken 1 notch off this front to try and get some more front grip. But I've been through adjusting the brake balance already today. I tried running more camber, didn't really make a difference. Tried reducing the suspension stiffness. I've tried reducing the toe. I've tried increasing the anti-roll bar just to make the less roll through the car relative to what they are now. I haven't done much with the dampers. I did try a little bit tightening up the front end so that there was less dipping as we came into the braking areas. and obviously loosening up the rear end to allow the car to lift as it goes through. But that didn't really give us any benefit, and that was on the slow bump. And I did try softening the fast bump, and I tried stiffening the fast bump, just relative to each other, so all the bump stiffness, rebound, all increased front and rear. Didn't really add any change to the lap times at all. Didn't make the car feel any better. Engine braking, I did try bringing it down a touch, didn't really benefit again. And then I have lowered the preload down to 80. I think it was at 100 yesterday. So they're the only changes, and I think it's just a case of nailing that last lap. But I would like to try, just for now, just lowering this rear wing, because it's the only tool we've got with regards to generating more front downforce, I think. So we'll just give it a whirl. I don't think it's going to be a great idea, to be honest. It doesn't, in fact, it doesn't add any more rear grip, any more front. If anything, it feels like it takes away from the front. It really has felt very inconsistent tuning, this car. Normally you can make a change and you can see a difference, whereas with this car I can make so many changes and see very little difference. One 144.07, 144.7. Fucking finally. Let's watch it, enjoy it. It was a scruffy lap as well, it really was. That middle sector is 300ths off my personal best. Final sector was a personal best. First sector's a few tenths. So we're just going to run a session now. I'm going to do a couple of laps. So I'm going to create an online event. I haven't really got one set up. So let's set this up. So we're going to have driving line, everything else, default setups off, realistic, damage we're going to have off, mechanical failures we're going to have off. We're going to have tyre wear off because we want to just do lap after lap. No fuel depletion. Private lobby, just me testing. We're going to have GT3 cars all the way down. We're going to go to Barcelona. And remember the date we set? So we're going to customise this date. And it's the 11th of the 5th. Start time was 1 o'clock. And weather, we're going to have medium cloud. Same again, session start time, 1 o'clock. Time progress, no. Medium cloud. And we're going to do, let's do 20-minute session. See where that gets us just for time frame that I've got, a minute. Track cutting, penalties and everything on, racing license off. So during the test session I found that the front tyres were definitely getting slightly overheated, so some tyre management would definitely be needed during the race. Having spent a little bit of time also looking at the lap times here, it was evident that I need to be a little bit more consistent. So welcome back guys, and to the final day testing. It's Friday afternoon. I've had a little run this morning in the Aston Martin, and I've got to be honest, really happy with how we're set up now. I've had a little break this morning, had some dinner and everything, come back, jumped in the car, and this is literally my first lap. It's a 1:44.860. I'm not happy that 1:44s aren't consistent, but I'm happy that 1:45s are consistent. I did a little race earlier, managed a couple of 1:45s quite happily. There was a few things that I noticed during the setup, and I have tweaked a few things, and I'll explain that in a little bit. Just let you watch this replay. No shit through this TV sound. Yeah, the car hooks up using much more brake pressure now with the ABS at 50%. But the car feels sweet around here now. Really got a really nice balance to the car. Still got a little correction through there, but really happy with the sector times. Sector 1's a 28 dead more or less, 39.7, and then a 37.1. I would like to see 36s. My final sector time best is a 36.8. So I could knock 300s off this time. 144, I don't think it's too bad for this car. Does sound really nice through the headset. Obviously a little bit out of shape there. I'll show it in the cockpit view as well. I'll just talk you through the lap. Yeah, really happy with the balance. I'm not moving my hands around here. I do prefer, it never looks right through here. I don't think in the replay it does it any justice. The car doesn't move the way it normally does, I don't think. Just easy enough there, wait for the bump, back on the power. Quick shift down to second gear. Just hugging, try and balance the car here. Keep on the inside, you lose time going wide. And then down to first gear, just at the apex. Just having to balance the car again. And again here, dropping it quickly down to second. Hugging that inside curb and back on the power. Again, it just wants to drop out of gear here, so just pop it down to third gear, hug the apex, run it wide. Here's where the car has lots of problems, but braking close to the 100 metre board now, 100 yard board. Just trying to really hug that. I struggle to get the power down, but clipping the curb, bouncing around second, first, and then power down. And then quickly second, then first at the corner. Back on the power, trying to get this lined up right. Trying to get the car straight to run through there. And then just on the power. I'll run through the tune. This is going to be the final tune. I'll just talk about why as well. I'll just stop there. So during, I did a little bit of an online race, and during that race I noticed that the front right tyre was just getting super hot, and I'm thinking, you know, it was almost glowing orange at some stages, and I just thought that the tyre is just generating too much friction, whether it must be rubbing over the ground too much. So whether the spring rate, the bump and the rebound are just not particularly in sync, or they're too stiff and it's not moving with the track, the slow bump. I thought that could be a massive problem. I wondered about the brake ducts, opening up the front brakes to try and reduce the temperature in the brakes and also in the tyre region. And I also had a look at reducing the caster. Yeah, I think I got it at full caster, I think it was 7.5. So I reduced this down to 6, so that during the corners when you're turning in, usually adding more caster will also increase the camber throughout turning. So by reducing the caster, whatever camber that I did have, it wasn't going to gain more camber whilst turning. And it was this inside tyre that was just sometimes reaching like 250, which is crazy hot. You know, you really want to see this getting no hotter than around 220, 230. But even now, it's such a high demand corner, the front left corner of the car. I can't really manage to keep the tyre temperatures any lower. I don't really care about the pressure in the tyre. That seems to be irrelevant, but the temperature has been a huge factor. I'll just come back to the tune that we've got. And tyre temperatures soft on the rear. 20. I don't know what these are in PS bar. Excuse me. The brake pressure, I just through I've increased the ABS strength to 50%. I am using full ABS. It's the only way that, because we're running such a high balance towards the front of the car, it's really hard not to lock up, and through locking up it just ends up putting more and more temperature through the front tyres. So I've been resigned to putting the ABS on for this build, just to try and keep the tyre temperature down and keep the car from locking up. So I'm running a little bit more brake pressure now, so I'm braking much closer to the 100-yard boards. Front duct, I've got that 100% open just to try and cool that area of the car, whether it's cooling the brakes. The brake discs aren't then radiating into the tyres, and they're still operating within a good window when you're flat out and you're in a race. Still running the full rear wing. I think that's the only option for this circuit. Cambers, I don't think I've adjusted those, but like I said, the caster angle, I've reduced that down to 6 degrees. I've lowered the rear ride height. It was at 80 because I have reduced the amount of bump stop we're running. We were running 15mm, and I thought the rear end was bottoming out, but because I've stiffened it up a little bit, I've reduced the ride height at the rear, which has also helped a little bit with the oversteer. And another thing that I did change was the toe angle on the rear, just to give us that little bit more stability in the acceleration zones, especially after the long back straight into the tight left-hander. Just getting the power down there and trying to keep the car stable. I've also reduced the anti-roll bar just 2 notches, or just 1 notch, just to try and give us a little bit more grip through this middle of the corners. What else we look at? I might have slightly softened up this front as well. The transition from fast bump to slow bump is down right at the bottom, so that's as fast as it'll go. I did look at changing the gear ratios, but if I drop that down, it's the same as 4th gear, so unfortunately there's not really much. And by lowering the gear ratio, it just ends up meaning that I'm flat out on the start-finish straight almost before the end of the straight. So if you're getting any toe down there, you're going to be hitting the rev limiter if you followed someone out of the back out of the last corner. So yeah, I'll just go back to the start and just so you can see all those. So I'll just pause it where you need to. Just go, yeah, it's just fuel for a race. I was doing an 8-lap race. I'm not running any traction control. Like I say, if I could get this coast ramp down to 10 degrees, I would have liked to. And changing the clutches didn't do any favours, to be honest. So that's the tune, Friday, and we're online racing. So I'm just having a quick look here to see what lobbies are available, and I noticed someone else was hosting one at Catalunya. So I'm just sitting while these load up, and I just pick my car, and I'm just looking at the settings for the race now, looking what the weather is like, the date, and I just noticed that it's manual gears, and there's also no anti-lock brakes. It's totally against what we've tuned the car to race in, but the date's the same. The time is around a similar time than we've had before. Fortunately, with the McLaren wheel, I can actually change gear with one side of the wheel. So I can push away from me to change up gear, and I can pull the lever towards me to change down gear. So I just noticed that the track temperature is about 50 to 60 almost Fahrenheit, lower than we've been setting the car up for, and it's also a heavy cloud, so I'm not sure how the tyres are going to react during this session. But knowing that there's no ABS, I just lowered the brake pressure because I knew we were locking up beforehand using around 74, anything higher than 74, so I just dropped that down a little bit. I'm just going to head out and try and set a lap. So I'm really struggling here to get any brake temperature through the brakes, and that's after doing about 3 laps of warming things up. So I just head back into the garage, look at bringing the brake ducts down a bit. I know before we were opening them to try and cool the front tyres, but at this point we can't even get any heat into the tyres of the brakes. So I just close those out a little bit. I'm also just spending a little bit of time here looking at what the settings are going to be through practice, qualifying and in the race, just to make sure setting the car up for the race really rather than qualifying, but trying to get the best out of qualifying to get a good grid position, but knowing that things might be different during the race. So as you can see, after about 3 laps, the brake temperatures are alright, but the tyre temperatures should have been in the 200s by now. So I just come back into the pit and put on a set of soft tyres to try and get some more temperature. Just lower the brake ducts a little bit. Just forgetting here I'm also using the manual and need to click away to get into first rather than pull towards me. Yeah, so you can see the tyre pressure here, or temperature, is looking a bit better really, allowing me a chance to get some grip and try and get a good grid position. It's really a case of one-shot qualifying now, as the clock's going to tick out during this lap, so it's a case of now or never really. I know the brake temperatures aren't exactly up to the best and the tyres are still getting warm, but I should be able to get a good lap in here hopefully. Using the manual gears with the McLaren wheel is a real bonus because you can use one hand, doesn't matter which hand, you can push the paddle away to change up gear just with using the 2 middle fingers I was using, but it's really a lot for one hand I think. Also, due to not being able to use the ABS, I've just been a little bit more tentative with the brake pedal. I'm sure with the ABS function and the automatic bots we could have set a much better lap time. Yeah, if I wasn't suffering with a sprained right wrist, a severe sprain to be honest, it could take some time to heal. But if I wasn't suffering with the wrist injury, I'd certainly always go for a manual gearbox. So yeah, pretty happy with second place, 46.5. Just going to spend a little bit of time now looking at all the sector times before the race starts. Looking especially in the third sector, surprised that no one's in the 36s, but also happy to see that everyone's quite competitive. So it's really important here that you're looking at the race conditions now. We've finished qualifying and the track temperature is going to be 121, which is almost twice what we've just used in qualifying. So definitely need to change back onto the hard tyres and look for managing that tyre temperatures. So I was slightly disappointed here to see the Ferrari just up ahead go off. I think we were robbed of a good race here and just a good battle to get first place position. But as the old saying goes, in order to finish first you've got to finish. So I can see the Lamborghini following quite closely behind, but I really need to start focusing on tyre management, that front left corner, and decide to switch to the telemetry view and just focus on my own race really, and just treat it as doing some more test laps and try and be as consistent as I can. So I just try and treat this as a test session now and just try and be as consistent as I can be. The race is pretty uneventful from here on right up until the last lap where I start to catch another Ferrari. Just a little bit cautious with how he's going to be during this last sector as I don't want to lose the race, but like a gentleman he just pulls off to one side. Really happy with the car throughout the entire race and just managed that front left tyre. So being super consistent with your lap times is definitely the way that you're going to start winning races. Just looking at the times at the end of the race, I would prefer to see the sector times displayed properly on RS Dash rather than accumulation of time in sectors 1 and 2. But you can see how consistent I am through sectors 3, just differing on laps 1 and the 8th lap. Really happy with that. Hope you've enjoyed the video, the 5-day test approach. I'd just like to say a big thank you to the driver coach Ross Bentley, whose podcasts and books I've been reading and listening to a lot recently. It certainly made me think a lot more about how to approach doing a track day and getting the best out of my own abilities really. Hope you've all enjoyed the video. If you have, please like and subscribe. Until the next time, thanks again.